The governor of Zamfara state is quoted. I didn't watch it, but I read multiple news reports quoted as saying that terrorists were arrested, but their contacts in Abuja promised them that they will be released, and they were released. The governor of a state said this. This is not Dele Farotimi said. The governor of Zamfara state is said to have said this. It is either the truth or it is a lie. And until that governor comes out to deny it, and he has said similar things in the past, it must be taken as the truth. What kind of country operates such horrible double standards? But people are being rounded up in Uromi, rightly so. While some persons have the powers of impunity. Jackson had just been sentenced to death for exercising his right to self-defense in his own farm after being stabbed multiple times in his own farm. And you say this country that is operating this kind of blatant double standard, occasioning blatant injustice would survive.
Welcome back, everyone, and happy Sunday to you all. So, my people, Dele Farotimi has dropped another bombshell concerning the state of Nigeria, especially these numerous killings from Fulani herdsmen. Like, every state now is experiencing killings from bandits, terrorists, Fulani herdsmen, and the Nigeria government is so quiet, so silent that we don't even understand what is going on. Like, Nigerians are kind of confused. If Nigeria government cannot protect its citizens, it means that we don't have government, let alone country. Because right now in Nigeria, Nigerians are providing security for themselves, light, water, like name it. Tell me one thing that Nigeria government is providing for Nigerians. This is the reason why Dele Farotimi said in this particular video that Nigeria is designed to fail. And this is exactly the direction we are heading to. Nigeria is already a fair country, my people. Nigerians are running away from Nigeria because they have realized that Nigeria government is not capable of protecting them. Even when you try to protect and defend yourself from these terrorists, Nigeria government will charge you. You're going to be killed by hanging. A country where terrorists are protected by government, but citizens will be charged to court and even killed by hanging just because they try to protect themselves. Chai! My people, let me allow you guys to listen to hear everything Dele Farotimi said in this particular video. You guys know that Dele Farotimi know the hard mouth. He always said it as it is and speak through to power. Just take a listen and hear everything that he said here. But before then, please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Share the video, give it a like, and also leave your thoughts in the comment section. Through comment, we all learn as well. Thank you so much for doing so.
He is from Bokos. So he forwarded the heart-rending story of a young girl from one of the Bokos villages, a eyewitness account of how a father and a brother were butchered on their farm. That's part of the week that was. But like almost every other week that has been in Nigeria in recent times, and it didn't begin with Bulaba. This is not about partisanship. The reality is that the pain of being a Nigerian, the very effort to stay alive, is becoming quite draining, you know. So I read that account. I just finished reading it before coming on here, and it left me even more despondent than I already was. So this part didn't even make it into my guardrail. I have my guardrail by which I would ordinarily seek to engage with you, but a story truly breaks the heart. It doesn't make sense in a country that is not declared to be at war, and even war is governed by rules. That's why you have the Geneva Convention. This does not make sense, and it's become normal, as abominable as it is. This has become normal in the country, Nigeria. But I'll go back to the way I had planned to deal with this. So let's deal with the week that was, as painful as the week as might have proven to be. Yeah, there was our action gomino who was busy telling us exactly how disconnected those who govern us have become from those that they govern. Look, when I was watching Sanwo-Olu on TV, vibrating by the work site, speaking pointless Dogonturenchi to cover what was patently a show of institutional incompetence. It's not just about the Lagos State governor. I mean, how much can a governor really do? But it's not a class monitor now. He is meant to focus on the bigger job of envisioning and ensuring that everybody will do as they're meant to do. But what happened? The entire system failed. At least Umahi was decent enough to heap the blame on some other person instead of admitting to the systemic nature of the failing. The week that was, my driver who was sent to Lagos Island didn't return home until minutes to 4 in the morning. I had neighbors who slept in the traffic. Nobody got fired for it. Absolutely nobody. Like some skit makers ended up asking, what you want to define for Lagos Island? That's the extent of the way the government sees us. But how can I talk about the week that was and forget action woman Natasha? Her heart no fury, like a woman scorned. I wouldn't want to be a Fabio at a time like this. It's bad enough that they've done a fantastic job of showing us the extent of putrefaction that has overtaken our system, because that should be the extent of our interest in these squabbles. Shouldn't extend beyond that. If you notice, Simi, I'm told, is busy looking for soft landing, somebody to cut a deal with him or Bulaba. He's not interested in the noise that you guys were making when you thought he was a proxy in your war with Wike. They're not send you. It was a family quarrel. They'll find a way to settle it within the family. It was never about the people of Rivers. Oh yeah, I'm told your president has traveled to his other country to go and play with his best friend, since you guys are always noisemakers, and he needs to assess exactly how much wonder he has performed in the 2 years in which he has afflicted you. And that assessment is best carried out in France, you see. And then I heard this Akama this morning, this was breaking. They're going to build you over 8,000 primary healthcare centers. I say, yeah, right. I see the ones they built in Lagos in the last 26 years. Believe that and you believe anything. They're going to build you a castle in the sky. Wait for it. It's coming. Yeah? I must again jump quickly to something that might seem completely unrelated to us, but it's very, very much related to us. The Trump juggernaut. The world is changing. That is the stark reality. The world is changing at an alarming pace, and these would have consequences. Nigeria is a country that already charges, I think, 100% interest. 100%. No, not interest, tariff, duty you pay on any imported vehicle. So the entire middle class has been rendered incapable of buying cars any longer, at least not brand new ones. And the used ones are not necessarily even any cheaper, really. But in that world where we import everything, including the things we pretend to make locally, where our honorable minister was busy vibrating about how they should ban the importation of solar panels. Even the ones that are locally manufactured, over 90% of the content are imported. So we are essentially an import-dependent economy that is even dependent on importation for crude, even though we are a crude-producing country. And we have entered the age of Trump, where everything, the existing world order, is being turned upside down. Who are the people thinking for us in this age that we are entering? That is the week that was. Trump reminded us that the world as we knew it is done. And the problem is we are horribly unprepared. So good morning, everybody. That was the week that was. It was a painful one. Spare a thought for those who are being killed every day in our country. Got a few seconds before 10 o'clock. I don't want to jump into my... Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock now. I was already yakking with our brethren, the early birds. I didn't have much to say. I only had pains to express in the first part. Mostly, we live in what fella tagged the country of pain. May we survive the pains of Nigeria. I love to speak with you this morning on a subject I have titled Purposed to Fail. Nigeria, purposed to fail. If you have availed yourself the opportunity to download my second book, The Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution, if you have downloaded it, you will be familiar, or you've read it, or you're familiar with my works, especially in the past 5-6 years, you will be familiar with the subject that I am forced to speak to this morning. I have dealt with these essentially in that book. It is still available for free download. Go to my website, delefarotimi.com. You can download that book for free. What I am going to be addressing this morning is merely one of the issues that I dealt with in that book. But because, as Yorubas will say, Bino Batonlori Ejeokintonle Ekono, for as long as the headlines endures, the fingernails must remain bloodstained. So I am forced to come back to speak to this issue because this is where we are right now. We're dealing with a state that was designed intentionally to fail because it is the purpose to which you would put anything that would influence its design. If I intended to carry plumbing materials, for instance, it's unlikely that I'm going to go buy porch, or is it porcher that you guys call it? Whatever. I wouldn't buy a luxury car to haul plumbing material. This is not designed for eating, so there is no way I would be looking to it and I wouldn't find the right design for a spoon. So it is the purpose to which you intend to put anything that influences the design of that thing. You see, the problem with Nigeria is that its designers couldn't possibly have had anything altruistic in mind whilst designing it. And who are the designers of Nigeria? It's the British, primarily. I think these should make the 125 years since the Berlin Conference, something along those lines. My older brother, Dele Ogun, has dealt extensively with research in this area, and he has spoken to the origins of Nigeria. But I have merely dealt with it at the surface level, and you might want to consider finding his books. He's got several of them, and he spoke to the root. But the key thing you must understand is that èṣù ò kí ń fúnyàn lápò ẹran kó má padà wá béèrè ọmọ. Satan will not dash you, and I use the word Satan in the biblical sense, not èṣù in our own cultural sense. Let me just say that ekwensu or èṣù, our own Yoruba or Igbo, he will not give you a male goat, a he-goat, and not come back to demand the offspring. When somebody who had enslaved you, traded you as commodities, shot you for game, dehumanized you, denied your history, obliterated your history, demonized your original spirituality, rendered you as vagabonds, treated us as chattels, when these are the ones who would sit down and design states based on the arbitrary strokes of their pen. When you find that this is their own motivation when they sat down to think of creating modern African states, it was purely for their own benefit. They did not create it with any regard or thought whatsoever for what would be of benefit or interest to those who are lumped together in the space they labeled Nigeria. In fact, it was the possession of a British commercial entity, the Royal Niger Company, before it was acquired. The Royal Charter was acquired, so we were in their eyes just merely a chattel, a place to be exploited. And then they came with colonialism. So we must understand that at no point were the inhabitants as individuals or as what you would like to delude yourselves that you are as citizens. Nobody asked us. They might have spoken with Awolowo, they might have had conferences with Azikiwe, they certainly spoke to Ahmadu Bello on behalf of people who even Ahmadu Bello probably didn't see as human per se, if he had the same Islamist worldview as today's ruiners of Nigeria. The point I am making is that your voices as individuals, your interest as individuals, it didn't matter to the British. So yes, the British designed a country that was meant to serve their own purpose in perpetuity. And they ensured that it had institutions verily designed to serve that purpose, even its educational system, the original spirituality that was destroyed to foster the Abrahamic religion, whilst the original spirituality was deliberately destroyed. The same grace that was available to the Romans in Acts of Apostle chapter 17 verse 23, completely unavailable to the Nigerian Christian. Our gods must be demonic. Eshu became Satan. Ekwensu became Satan. Everything about us became wrong. Felasa and Kolo mentality. We became a warped people. I'm saying all of this so that those of you who have always maintained that Nigeria must be broken must understand that when I argue with you and against your thesis, it is not born of an ignorance of the foundational problems that this Nigeria has. It was purposed, designed to fail. We can agree on that. All right? So if you are my Odua Republic brother, as distinct from the Yoruba Ponu idiots, I understand the fine distinction between my Republican brothers desirous of Odua Republic and those who have been weaponized with hatred and have become the Ronu gang. Very careful distinction. Now, you, my Odua Republican brother, and then those of you who have come to desire Biafra, and I'm not talking to those who have come to believe that murdering fellow victims legalizes a genuine grievance in taking up arms against their fellow victims. Let's be clear. We can speak to the grievance without endorsing the madness. I speak to that grievance. I accept its legitimacy. I do not endorse the violence, especially the one that is turned inward, as all violence eventually turns. So let's deal with the fact that Nigeria, yes, is designed to fail. And if it is allowed to continue along its current trajectory, it will fail. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It does not take a genius to know that that will happen if it continues along its current trajectories. Now, if we can all agree that Nigeria will fail if it continues to travel along its current trajectories, what then do we do if I continue to argue that you should not be talking about its division? I would explain myself to you, because it is sometimes an inability to define the scope of disagreement that usually leads to a tractable argument that ends up producing no solution. It is good to argue, but let us argue on what we disagree over. You know, we're talking about the fact that this country is purposed to fail. But if it is purposed to fail, who would be the victims of that failure? Because let us be clear, the beneficiaries of Nigeria, both its original creators, who would appear to be losing control of their creation these days as the world is shifting in the age of Trump. Don't worry, I won't drag you into that deep water, but let me just put it this way. Those who benefit from keeping together this criminal empire do not want to see it broken. They would rather kill each and every one of me and you rather than see it broken. And they are the purveyors of violence, and they have divided us sufficiently to make sure that they can maintain their hold on power for as long as we stay divided. The contradictions that are tearing Nigeria apart are many. But there is something that we must all begin to understand. A country that is designed to discount citizenship, that is found on ethnic rights with no respect for either the citizen or the individual cannot stand. It is designed and purposed to fail, because when your recognition is found only in a group and your humanity and individuality is discounted, it will not bode well. You do not build a society where the people are constantly yearning for justice and equity. How do you explain that in our country, Nigeria, in the upper week, we were all busy, united in our condemnation, largely united in our condemnations, rightly so too, of what took place in Uromi. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly today. You know, the problem with us, often manu, Yoruba people, once we see people across that water, everybody is Yemiri or Hausa. We're that simple in the way we embrace Nigeria. But the critical thing I'm seeking to put across is this. When what happened in Uromi happened, we were all universal, almost universal, in condemning the evil, even across the lines of our many divisions. And then, in this last week, this very last week untold numbers were slaughtered in Bokos. The same stories are coming out of Ondo State. The middle belt, particularly Benue, is not left out of this madness. But the thing is, the grief was not as universal. Voices that were loud in condemnation, rightly so, of the madness that took place in Uromi were resoundingly loud in their silence when the madness in Bokos, in Ondo, in Benue happened. What happened to the outrage? And this leads me to begin to speak to something that I believe we all need to now begin to pay attention to. We cannot continue to lie to ourselves that our situation is normal. And as a friend of mine says, if you must solve a problem, you must first of all understand the problem. If a people as diverse as we are going to be able to live together at peace with each other, it can only happen when we are all submitted to laws. It cannot be that we have as a society subjectifies the truth to the point where Fulani people carrying arms across multiple state lines are hunters whose death we rightly condemn, whose murders we rightly condemn as human beings, even if these were not exact, even if they were proven to have been terrorists and kidnappers, I do not believe that anything would have justified or excused their murder. But if we could find the capacity to be outraged by what happened to them, pray tell me, what happened to our sense of outrage in relation to the madness of this last week? And because it didn't start last week, the governor of Zamfara State is quoted. I didn't watch it, but I read multiple news reports, quoted as saying that terrorists were arrested, but their contacts in Abuja promised them that they will be released, and they were released. The governor of a state said this. This is not Dele Farotimi said. The governor of Zamfara State is said to have said this. It is either the truth or it is a lie. And until that governor comes out to deny it, and he has said similar things in the past, it must be taken as the truth. What kind of country operates such horrible double standards? But people are being rounded up in Uromi, rightly so. Why some persons have the powers of impunity. Jackson had just been sentenced to death for exercising his right to self-defense in his own farm after being stabbed multiple times in his own farm. And you say this country that is operating this kind of blatant double standard, occasioning blatant injustice would survive. And these are not episodes. These are systemic. What kind of country are we building, if not one that was already purposed to fail? When we have subjectivized truth to the point where we seem to have subjectivized even humanity, one life has more value than another life, and then we develop a sense of selective outrage that allows us to hypocritically condemn certain actions without understanding that the connective threads are longer than the lifetime of the lies that we tell in explanation of our subjectivized truths. So it's the same you who could find outrage for the murder of 16 lives, 16 human beings, whose value would appear to have become escalated on account of their religion and their region. And you see, this is where the madness now comes. You find some people in the south, and this is where the connective threads become even more annoying. Bokos is in the north. It's forever talking about northern interest. So is it that the people of Bokos have their humanities discounted on account of their ethnicity? That the same people who are championing northern interest and rights in condemnation of the human tragedy that took place in Uromi, all of a sudden, there is nothing wrong with taking, no condemnation. The same thing happened over Christmas. I read the account of a young girl. It was sent to me by a friend, Dr. Kavan. It was heartbreaking. She witnessed her father and her brother slaughtered on her farm. And it's still the same country, and you want to, and the president of that country He sat in France evaluating his stewardship, quote and unquote. But everybody is going on about their businesses as if everything is normal. See, I think it is of critical importance that we all understand and understand very quickly that we have very few choices in front of us. We are trapped in a country that is designed to fail and that is already failing tragically. Believe it or not, Nigeria is failing tragically. When you have a country where the law does not rule and where impunity crows as blatantly as it crows in Nigeria, with the example of what you and I can see in broad daylight happening in Rivers State, where you cannot expect the judiciary to be of any use in pursuit of justice, it is only a matter of time before anarchy would break out in such a place. It is inevitable that those who are hunted like animals in their own land will eventually embrace the capacity to repel their marauders, and even if not decisively, at least some deterrent. And that is the beginning of the end. The state has failed, or is failing, if you want me to be more charitable. It was designed to do exactly this, but when a house falls, the occupants are always the victims. Me and you are the occupants. I can sit down here and we can all be agonizing, and we can take a lot of pleasure from agonizing over our fate. But I am done with agonizing. I don't believe that agonizing will do us any good. I am of the very firm opinion that we have come to that point where we must recognize the commonalities of our afflictions, look beyond your tribal blinkers, understand very clearly that one, the man in Bokos is in the north. So when you look to that north and you condemn everybody as northerners and the oppressors of you in the south, understand first of all that that man in Bokos is at the front line. He's right there on the front line. You, who now believes that the Fulani is the source of your problem, the governor of Zamfara, who was complaining about those who had Abuja connection and were released, I believe he is Fulani. At least Zamfara should be about 50% Fulani, 50% Hausa. It's almost like an even mix. Kankara is not a town in Yoruba land. It's a town, or at least was, if it's not a ghost town now, in Katsina State. They are Fulanis. What is happening to Nigeria is not about the people of Nigeria. The people of Nigeria are actually the victims of Nigeria. The victimhood cuts across all ethnicities, and it is not about tribe. It's not even about religion, because the people being killed in Zamfara, even nowhere else, are fellow Muslims. The people being killed in Katsina, in Sokoto, fellow Muslims, sometimes inside the mosques. What you are saying is a complete failure of the state. It is the people that have become as victims. It is not the state itself. The state itself, as evil as it is, would be preserved, because the entire machinery of the Nigerian state is designed for the preservation of the state, even if it means the extermination of the victims who think themselves to be citizens. So what you need to do to forestall this imminent collapse and evil is not about let's break up Nigeria. That's not the place. If you start from there, you've defeated yourself. You've successfully ensured that you are not going to find a way out of this mess. It would mean that they have infiltrated your mind. There are no divisions between them. You are the ones dividing yourselves. Even if you must divide Nigeria, focus first on recognizing that the division can come later. You need to salvage the house before it collapses on your head. Take remedial measures, salvage it first. Because if you don't salvage it and you are shouting division, 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 they know they can outweigh you. They have enough firepower to ensure that yes, you want that division, but you will not get it, and they will outweigh you because it is a long game. I've been at this for 40 years, since I was 17, in fact 16. I've seen Nigeria like this, I've been moaning and lamenting like this, and it has not changed because it will outlive all of us. I didn't have any, in fact, I didn't have any beard. I didn't have any gray. Now I'm grizzled and gray. Nigeria has waited long enough and it will outlive me, just as it will outlive you. So if you do not do something substantial to alter its trajectory, the reality is that it is purposed and designed to fail, but it is purposed and designed to fail as a state that has citizens and that gives benefits of visionary leadership to citizens. But it would be retained as a slave colony if you do not act to change its trajectory. You may do whatever you care to do with it once you have taken control and become citizens, but until you become citizens of this prison called Nigeria, until you fight for the right to be citizens of Nigeria, as unjust as it is, as destroyed as it is, as much as it is purposed to fail, if you do not move beyond that mindset that says that you can divide it without becoming citizens first, you will only end up with a state that is fulfilling its purpose. I was reading online, a person was talking about their experience. They got a mining license somewhere up north, and they walked away from the license because they realized that to access the site, the land covered by their license, they would have to displace the villagers. And in the mining industry, apparently, there is a syncretic relationship, a most incestuous one, between the terror groups who are labeled bandits and those who mine. You get the mining license from the Nigerian government, and then you deal with non-state agents in order to remove human beings from land. That is the criminal empire that our country is. If those were citizens, if the law would rule in our country, would that happen? How do we know that what is happening in Bokos is not tied to some mineral deposits that might be in the place, or it might be for the fertile land of the plateau? Let us think about this and understand very carefully that when we are done recognizing ourselves as fellow victims, we must then begin to organize ourselves. It is inevitable that if you do not organize yourselves, you continue to agonize for nothing. But when you have recognized yourself, organized yourselves, if you are agonizing, your agonizing is you educating each other because you are now in some sort of collective. You then begin to demonstrate instead of raging, because when you are raging, you are just destroying. Demonstrate when you have been done, when you are done organizing yourselves, agonizing amongst yourselves, lament amongst yourselves. Let each person know what their pains are across the ethnic divides, across the religious divides. Educate each other as to exactly where your shoes are hurting. Your afflictions are common. There is nothing afflicting Abdullah that is not bothering Nodu. Absolutely nothing is wrong with Kayode that is not the problem of Haruna. Don't lie to yourselves in thinking that, okay, let me give you an example. In the days of Buhari, Marginalization, 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 marginalization. They were singing up and down the place. Fulani this, Fulani that, Fulani this, Fulani that. Now is the age of Bulaba. And right here in the age of Bulaba is the Yoruba season. Or so they are shouting. But I can't recall a time when the Yoruba peasantry have been more wretched than we have become in recent times. Our lot as a collective have become quite wretched in Yoruba land, and yet a local. If the Igbo man becomes the president of Nigeria tomorrow and he follows the same pattern, appointing only Igbo people into offices, what difference would it make to the Igbo people themselves? Until we recognize the fact that we are all victims who have to work together as a collective, we are all victims who have to work together as a collective, we can never be free. Our freedom is not going to be found in our division. We can divide it after we've won our freedom. It's large enough to become as many as 50 countries. That's a fact. But if you are not citizens first, you cannot become Biafrans or Dua Republicans or whatever catches your fancy without having to walk into that on the blood of fellow victims. Their survival is dependent on our division and is dependent on us acting without thoughts. But if we keep thinking without acting, nothing would ever change. We have completed the work on the bill for electoral reform, and it will be submitted in this week, and of course will be shared with you, particularly during the symposium we're having as part of the posthumous birthday celebration for our departed leader, Chief Ayo Adebanjo. That symposium will be coming up on Thursday at the Moson Center. It is public, it is for the public. We have specially invited those with whom Afenifere have had long-standing association, and we look forward to seeing them there. But we are also inviting the general public, particularly those of you who might have even wondered exactly what is Dele Farotimi doing in what had been said to be a conclave of old heads. Well, I have my grace now, and I'm qualified to sit amongst the elders, at least on account of my grace. But I am not sat in some ethnic conclave. I am sat in the political party that governed Nigeria, at least in the western part, the AG. Afenifere was the Yoruba name for the action group. It was the opposition party in the Northern Regional Assembly. It was the opposition party in the Eastern Regional Assembly. And it was the official opposition at the center in the Federal House of Representatives. So Afenifere was never at any point in time a regional party, but it governed a region, and that is why it became identified with that region. Ikoku, Enaoru, and many others were not Yorubas. They were members of the action group, parliamentarians too. I'll leave that until I see you, hopefully, at the Moson Center on Thursday, the 10th of April. Registration starts at 11 o'clock, but the event itself starts at 12, and it will last until 3 o'clock. My purpose is not to bellyache. nothing would be gained in bellyaching. And I have made myself clear, I am not interested in bellyaching. My effort is designed to help awaken you and probably point you in the right direction. And it is my hope that you will see this in that light. I could talk from now until kingdom comes. But until we find the courage to admit to ourselves that Nigeria as it is designed to fail, purposed to fail, and then find the courage to re-engineer it, to have citizenship as the basis of its existence, and the rule of law as a governing principle. If you don't find the grace to do that, it's going to die with catastrophic consequences for all of us. Have a blessed week ahead of you. As my people, the Yorubas, will say, Obo, Oboro, Kamo, Aboro, láti sọ fọmọlúàbí tó bá dénú ẹ̀ àdódìdí. Half a word is enough for the wise. I've said my piece. God bless you all and have a blessed week ahead. Amen.
Welcome to Chamrasi News TV.